Solve this, and $500 million is yours. The words sliced through the VIP lounge on the 50th floor of the Ritz-Carlton, Tokyo. Crystal chandeliers caught the light. Champagne glasses clinked. 20 CEOs turned toward the voice. Hiroshi Tanaka stood beside a rolling blackboard, chalk dust still fresh on his fingers. His smile was sharp, dangerous, the kind of smile that came from absolute certainty.
But if you're wrong, you'll be humiliated in front of the
paused.
entire industry.
Let the silence grow heavy. You'll be humiliated in front of the entire industry. Laughter rippled through the room. These were the titans of Asia-Pacific business, MIT professors, hedge fund managers, tech billionaires. 5 had already tried. 5 had failed. Then a hand set down a serving tray. A black woman in a white apron stepped forward. The laughter died. Every eye locked on her name tag. Keisha, service staff. She untied the apron slowly, folded it with careful precision, placed it on the side table like a soldier laying down armor before battle. "I'd like to try, Mr. Tanaka." His eyes flickered. Just for a second. Surprise. Then the mask slid back. What could a server possibly know that the best minds in the room didn't? But where? And why did that recognition look like fear? The mask slid back into place. Too late. What could a server possibly know that terrified a billionaire CEO? If you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, keep watching. This story is for you. Tanaka pulled a leather briefcase onto the table. The buckles clicked open. He withdrew a folder thick with documents and turned to the blackboard. Chalk scraped against the surface. The sound cut through the murmurs. 3 lines of equations emerged. Integral symbols, matrices, game theory variables. And at the center, 4 Japanese characters. Credit crisis, someone muttered. The equations sprawled across the board like a puzzle designed to break minds. Tanaka stepped back, dusted his hands. His audience leaned forward, expensive cologne mixing with the sharp scent of fresh chalk. 10 minutes, he announced. The clock starts when you pick up the chalk. A South Korean fintech CEO approached first. His fingers moved quickly, scribbling variables. Then he stopped, stared at the kanji, shook his head, and retreated. The Japanese part, the context isn't clear. An MIT professor tried next, pulled out a pocket calculator, punched numbers. The screen flashed error. He muttered something about incomplete parameters and stepped away. One by one, they failed. The chalk passed from hand to hand like a curse no one could break. Keisha stood against the wall. Her fingers tapped a rhythm against her hip. Silent, measured. Her lips moved slightly, forming soundless words. The white apron lay folded on the side table. One corner had slipped loose, fabric hanging like a question mark. A man in a tailored suit waved dismissively in her direction. "Hey, you still standing here? Bring us more champagne." Light laughter scattered through the room. Keisha's head dipped. She turned toward the exit. Her hand reached for the apron. Fingers tightened on the fabric until her knuckles went pale. Then she stopped. Her shoulders straightened. She pivoted back toward the blackboard. The sound of her footsteps on marble echoed louder than it should have. "I'd like to attempt this problem, Mr. Tanaka." The room fell silent. Tanaka's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A flicker of recognition, maybe concern. He covered it with a slow smile. "You read kanji, Keisha?" His voice drew out her name, made it sound like a challenge. The Australian CEO leaned back in his chair. "Do you even have a university degree, or just training in service?" More voices joined. "You think 500 million is a joke? This is advanced mathematics, not..." "Let her try, Tanaka." The interruption came from a Singaporean CEO. "We want to see if anyone can solve it." Keisha met Tanaka's gaze, held it. Then she spoke. Fluent Japanese. The syllables rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. The translation hung in the air like a slap. "Yes, I can read it. This problem isn't just mathematics. It requires linguistic interpretation." The room stilled. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Tanaka's smile tightened. His fingers drummed once against the table. "Ah, you speak Japanese. Impressive." He paused. "But speaking a language is one thing. Understanding complex theory is another. $500 million isn't for people who work in..." low-level service positions. He let the words hang, looked her up and down, made sure everyone saw the dismissal. The room erupted in laughter. Someone raised a phone, snapped a photo. This'll make a great LinkedIn meme. Keisha bit her lower lip, hard enough that a thin line of blood appeared at the corner. Her hand found the apron again, gripped it, released it. She smoothed the fabric flat against the table. The gesture was deliberate, final. I still request permission to try, sir. Tanaka studied her for a long moment. The laughter faded to whispers. He could refuse. Send her away. Protect himself from whatever was coming. But 20 CEOs were watching, waiting. He gestured toward the blackboard. 10 minutes, Keisha. The clock doesn't lie. She picked up the chalk. The weight felt familiar in her palm. The LED screen behind Tanaka flickered to life. Red numbers appeared. 10 Sarikayari. The countdown began. Tanaka circled her slowly. His footsteps measured, deliberate. He held a glass of sake, the liquid catching the chandelier light. You read kanji, Keisha? The question came out soft, almost gentle, but the room heard the edge underneath. He stopped behind her, close enough that she could smell the expensive liquor on his breath. Where did you study? Harvard? Oxford? He paused. Or perhaps just vocational training. The Australian CEO smirked. Does your degree come from YouTube University? Laughter erupted. Sharp and cutting. A Singaporean executive leaned forward. $500 million isn't play money, sweetheart. Do you understand what that number even means? Keisha's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. But she didn't move. Tanaka walked to the front of the room, raised his glass like a conductor preparing an orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a volunteer from our service staff. He gestured toward her with mock formality. Perhaps she can teach us all something about humility. The room roared. Someone's phone camera flashed. Then another. A man near the window muttered to his companion. This is going straight to LinkedIn. Comic relief. Keisha stood perfectly still. The only sign of strain was the white pressure around her knuckles, and a thin red line where her teeth had caught her lower lip. Blood. Just a drop. But there. Then she spoke. The words came out steady, clear. University of Tokyo, Mathematics and Linguistics. The laughter stopped like someone had cut the audio. Tanaka's expression froze. His eyes narrowed. Just for a heartbeat, something flickered there. Recognition. Maybe fear. Then it vanished behind professional composure. University of Tokyo. He repeated it slowly, tasting each syllable. Then why are you serving champagne at a business summit? The question hung in the air, brutal in its simplicity. Keisha met his gaze, didn't flinch. My parents died. I needed money for their debts. For tuition I couldn't finish. Her voice stayed level. No tremor, no plea for sympathy. But that doesn't make me stupid, Mr. Tanaka. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. An American CEO shifted uncomfortably. The Singaporean executive who'd mocked her earlier suddenly found his drink very interesting. But Tanaka wasn't finished. He set his sake glass down with a deliberate click. Smiled. The kind of smile that came before a killing blow. Ah, yes, you speak Japanese. Very impressive, truly. He nodded as if conceding a point. But you know what else requires Japanese skills? Tour guides, karaoke hostesses, flight attendants. He let the implication settle. $500 million isn't for people who work low-level service jobs, even educated ones. His eyes swept over her uniform, her name tag, the slight coffee stain on her sleeve. Some people are simply born for different stations in life. The room exploded. Not everyone laughed, but enough did. A flash went off. Then another. Phones out, capturing the moment. Oh man, this is gold, someone whispered. Wait till the guys back home see this. Keisha's hand moved to the apron on the side table. She touched it, fingers trembling now. The white fabric had a damp spot where someone had spilled water on it earlier. Or had it been deliberate? She stared at that wet patch. Then at Tanaka. Then at the sea of faces watching her like she was tonight's entertainment. What was she doing here? Why had she thought this would work? but her hand didn't pick up the apron to tie it back on. Instead, she pressed her palm flat against the fabric, smoothed it, the way someone might prepare a battle flag before marching into war. When she looked up, her eyes were dry, determined. "I still want to try, sir." Tanaka studied her, really looked at her. His smile faded slightly. Something calculated moved behind his expression. He could end this, send her away, protect himself. But that would look weak, afraid, and Hiroshi Tanaka didn't show fear. He turned to the LED screen, pressed a button. The timer glowed red. 10. 10 minutes, Keisha. His voice carried across the silent room. The clock is honest, even when people aren't. The timer's beep cut through the silence. Sharp, relentless, each second a small knife. 10 minutes on the clock. The numbers glowed red against the black screen. Keisha picked up the chalk. Her hand trembled. Just slightly. Enough that the first mark on the board came out shaky. She stopped, took a breath, started again. The integral symbol appeared. Then a matrix. Variables flowing across the blackboard in careful strokes. But her hand wasn't steady. The chalk kept slipping, breaking. She picked up a smaller piece, kept writing. Someone in the back muttered, "She's just scribbling, buying time." A few executives had already turned away. Conversations resumed, low voices discussing deals and mergers, as if she'd already failed, as if she didn't matter. Keisha paused, stared at the 4 Japanese characters Tanaka had written at the equation's center. Her lips moved. Silent words forming shapes. Credit crisis, credit trust. The Australian CEO checked his phone, barely looked up. This is painful to watch. 9 minutes left, then 8.5. But something changed in Keisha's posture. Her shoulders straightened. Her hand stopped shaking. She erased one line, wrote it again. Different variables, different approach. "Not credit crisis," she whispered. So quiet that only the people nearest could hear. "Trust crisis. The characters don't mean economic credit. They mean the trust between people." She wrote a new line in smaller script beside the equation. The English translation flowing with sudden confidence. Value of human relationships. Tanaka had been leaning against the wall, sipping sake, playing the part of a man watching inevitable failure. He straightened, moved closer to the board. His eyes scanned what she'd written. The confidence in his expression flickered. His jaw tightened, just for a second. But it was there. He stepped forward quickly, too quickly. "You're going the wrong direction, Keisha." His voice cut across the room, loud enough to make heads turn. "This is game theory economics, not philosophy. You're wasting time with linguistic interpretation." He pointed to one of her variables. "This is clearly incorrect." But his voice had a new quality now, a slight tremor hidden beneath the authority. His finger was shaking. Keisha looked at him, then back at the board. Her eyes moved between his face and the equation. She saw it. The micro-expression. The flash of worry he couldn't quite hide. The hotel manager stood near the wall, silent, watching. His expression neutral, but his attention locked on the blackboard. On Tanaka. On the strange energy shifting in the room. 7 minutes remaining. The clock didn't care about anyone's fear. Keisha turned back to the board, ignored Tanaka's interruption, kept writing. She added another line, then another. The chalk moved faster now. More certain, a new equation emerged. X. Value of human relationships. Profit. "If the value of people is greater than profit," she murmured, working through the logic, "then X is greater than 1. The system is sustainable. But if it's less..." She underlined the Japanese characters, wrote beside them in English, "Trust crisis." Then you get a crisis, not of money, of trust. Tanaka's sake glass slipped in his hand. Liquid sloshed, barely caught before it fell. "That's not..." he started. But several CEOs were leaning forward now, looking at the board with new interest. The Singaporean executive frowned. "Wait, she might actually be onto something." "The linguistic angle makes sense," someone else added. "Game theory does account for trust parameters." Tanaka's face had gone pale. A sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He stepped between Keisha and the board, blocking her view. You don't need to explain the kanji. Just solve for X. That's all the problem requires. His words came faster, urgent. Don't waste time on unnecessary interpretation. But Keisha didn't stop. She stepped around him, picked up the chalk again. 5 minutes left, maybe less. The numbers counted down, but something else was counting up. Tension, realization, the slow creeping awareness that maybe, just maybe, the woman everyone had dismissed knew exactly what she was doing, and Tanaka knew it too. 5 minutes remained when Keisha's chalk moved into overdrive. The equations multiplied, symbols cascading down the blackboard like water breaking through a dam. Her hand no longer trembled. Each stroke came with purpose, precision. Sweat beaded on her forehead, rolled down her temple. She didn't wipe it away. The chalk in her hand had worn down to a stub barely 2 centimeters long. She gripped it between thumb and forefinger, kept writing. An MIT professor leaned forward, squinted at the board. Wait, that's actually... Is she using the Nash equilibrium framework? Modified, someone else muttered. She's applying it to trust dynamics instead of pure economic competition. The room's energy shifted. Conversations died. Attention locked onto the blackboard. Tanaka stood frozen, his sake glass forgotten in his hand, watching his carefully constructed challenge unravel. 4 minutes left. Keisha paused, stared at the Japanese characters again. Her lips moved, working through the translation one more time. Where did you study mathematics, Keisha? Tanaka's voice cut in, smooth, calculated. MIT? Stanford? Or perhaps YouTube? The mockery was deliberate, designed to rattle her, make her doubt herself. Keisha didn't turn around, didn't stop writing. University of Tokyo, she said quietly. Mathematics and linguistics, double major. The room went silent. Tanaka's composure cracked, just for a second. His eyes widened, then narrowed. University of Tokyo? He repeated it slowly. Then why are you working as a server at a hotel? The question hung like an accusation. Keisha's hand stopped. The chalk hovered above the board. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she turned, looked directly at him. My parents died 3 years ago. Her voice stayed level. No tremor, no plea for sympathy. They left debts, medical bills. I had to leave school to work, to survive. She paused. Let the weight of those words settle. But that doesn't make me stupid, Mr. Tanaka. The silence that followed was absolute. An American CEO shifted in his seat. The Singaporean executive who'd laughed earlier suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. But Keisha wasn't finished. She turned back to the board. Her hand moved to the white apron still folded on the side table. The fabric had a damp patch where someone had spilled water on it earlier. Or had it been deliberate? She picked it up, felt the weight of it. 3 years of survival, 3 years of being invisible, dismissed, underestimated. Then she set it back down, smoothed it flat. When she picked up the chalk again, her hand was steady as stone. 3 minutes. The final section of the equation began to take shape. She wrote the conclusion in English beside the Japanese characters. X, truest, value of human relationships, profit. Then underneath, if value of people, profit, then X1, sustainable system. If value of people, profit, then X1, trust crisis. Her chalk moved to the corner of the board, smaller writing now, almost like a footnote. This problem is based on the Tanaka Corp employment model, data from Q2 2024 internal reports. The chalk went silent. Tanaka's face drained of color. The sake glass slipped from his fingers, shattered on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it up. What did you just write? His voice came out tight, strangled. Keisha turned to face the room. The countdown timer glowed behind her. 2 minutes left, but she was done writing. For the past 3 months, I've been observing, documenting. She spoke clearly, calmly. I work at this hotel. I also worked briefly at 2 other Tanaka Corp properties. I noticed a pattern. She gestured to the equation. 47 foreign employees had their salaries cut by 40% between April and July 2024. Not one Japanese employee was affected. The room erupted. That's absurd. She's making accusations. Where's your proof? Keisha reached into her uniform pocket, pulled out a small leather notebook, worn, pages yellowed at the edges. She opened it, held it up so the nearest CEOs could see. Handwritten entries, names, countries of origin, salary before, salary after, percentage cut, all 47 documented in careful script. I wrote this down, she said. Every conversation, every colleague who trusted me enough to share their pay stubs. She set the notebook on the table, reached into her other pocket, pulled out folded papers, photocopies of pay stubs, 10 of them. She spread them across the table like evidence at a trial. Hassan from Pakistan, Maria from the Philippines, Chen from China, all cut by 40%, all foreign workers. An Australian CEO stood up, walked to the table, picked up one of the pay stubs, examined it. This has the official Tanaka Corp HR stamp, he said slowly, and the signature. Other executives crowded around. Phones came out. Not for mockery this time, for documentation. The Singaporean CEO looked at Tanaka. Is this true? Tanaka's jaw worked. His hands clenched into fists. This is a business decision. Market conditions required cost optimization. Foreign workers are paid higher base salaries, so naturally they get cut while Japanese employees don't? The Australian CEO's voice hardened. That's not cost optimization, Tanaka. That's discrimination. Keisha walked back to the blackboard. The timer showed 40 seconds remaining. She picked up the last stub of chalk, wrote one final line across the bottom of her solution. The real answer to this problem isn't a number, it's the value of human dignity. The timer hit 0. The beep echoed through the silent room. Keisha set down the chalk, turned to face Tanaka. I solved your equation, Mr. Tanaka, both the mathematical component and the philosophical one. She pointed to the board. You created a problem about trust crisis, about what happens when you value profit over people. Her voice carried across the room, clear, unshakable. You didn't realize you were describing yourself. Tanaka stood completely still. His face had gone from pale to ashen. The hotel manager stepped away from the wall, moved closer. His neutral expression had shifted to something else. Interest, maybe respect. The Australian CEO broke the silence. She's right. The math checks out. And the interpretation? He looked at Tanaka. The interpretation is damning. One by one, other voices joined. The linguistic approach was correct. Game theory does account for trust parameters. She solved it. The Singaporean CEO stood. Tanaka, you need to address these allegations. Now. But Tanaka wasn't looking at him. He was staring at Keisha, at the small black woman in a server's uniform who'd just dismantled him in front of the entire Asia-Pacific business elite. The woman everyone had laughed at. The woman who'd turned his own challenge into a weapon. The Australian CEO's voice cut through the murmurs. Tanaka, did Keisha solve the problem correctly or not? You need to confirm. Tanaka stood motionless. His hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. He said nothing. Answer the question, the Singaporean executive pressed. Is her solution correct? Still silence. Keisha stepped away from the blackboard, turned to face the room. If Mr. Tanaka won't confirm, I have proof of another kind. She walked to the side table, picked up her small leather notebook, the one she'd shown moments before. This isn't just about me. She opened to a marked page. I've been documenting the salary cuts for 3 months. 47 people, all foreign workers. She set the notebook down, pulled the photocopied pay stubs from her pocket again, spread them wider across the table. I couldn't get all 47 to share their documents. Some were too afraid of retaliation. Her voice stayed calm, factual. But 10 trusted me. 10 were brave enough. An American CEO leaned over the table, picked up one of the pay stubs. This is Maria Gonzalez, Philippines. He read from the document. April 2024, $4,200. July 2024, $2,520. He set it down, picked up another. Hassan Ahmed, Pakistan, $4,500 to $2,700. Another CEO joined him, then another. They passed the documents between them like prosecutors reviewing evidence. The Singaporean executive pulled out his phone, started taking photos of the pay stubs. "These have official Tanaka Corp stamps," he said. "HR signatures. These are legitimate." Keisha's voice cut through the examination. Every single one shows the same pattern. 40% reduction. Same quarter. Only foreign employees affected. She looked directly at Tanaka. "You want to talk about the equation? About trust crisis?" She gestured to the blackboard. "You built one, in your own company." Tanaka's face had gone from ashen to red. His jaw clenched. "This is a private business matter. You have no right to—" "I have every right." Keisha's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. "I'm one of the 47. My salary was cut from $4,500 to $2,700. She pulled one more document from her pocket, unfolded it. Her own pay stub, creased, worn at the edges, stained with what might have been tears. "I've been working 3 shifts a day to make up the difference. 3 years trying to pay off my parents' debts. 3 years being invisible." She set the document on top of the others. "I didn't solve your problem for $500 million, Mr. Tanaka. I solved it because I wanted people like you to understand something." The room had gone completely silent. The value of a human being can't be measured in profit margins. An Australian CEO stood, looked at Tanaka, then at the document spread across the table. 47 people, 40% cuts, all foreign workers. His voice hardened. "That's not business optimization, Tanaka. That's systematic discrimination." The Singaporean executive nodded. "And during the same quarter, your company opened 2 new hotel branches. I saw the press releases, Osaka and Kyoto." He pulled up his phone, showed the screen, a news article with a photo of Tanaka at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Grand opening, June 2024. You were expanding while cutting salaries?" Other phones came out. Quick searches, more evidence appearing. "Tanaka Hotel Kyoto, open July 2024. Your Q2 earnings report shows 35% profit growth." The facts piled up like stones, each one harder to deny than the last. Tanaka's hands shook. He reached for his sake glass, remembered it had shattered. His hand fell empty to his side. "The market required," he started. "The market required nothing." The Australian CEO's voice cut like a blade. "Your profit was up. Your expansion continued. You cut salaries to pad your margins, and you targeted foreign workers because you thought they couldn't fight back." He looked at Keisha, then back at Tanaka. "She solved your equation perfectly, both parts, the mathematics and the meaning." A pause, heavy with judgment. "Keisha wins. The $500 million belongs to her." Tanaka's voice exploded across the room. "This is a legal business decision. Cost optimization is standard practice in competitive markets." He straightened his shoulders, tried to reclaim authority through volume. "You people don't understand the pressures of running a multinational corporation. Sacrifices have to be made. Difficult choices? Difficult." Keisha's voice cut through his speech, quiet, but sharp as broken glass. She stepped forward, closed the distance between them to less than 2 meters. "I'm not just an unhappy employee, Mr. Tanaka. I'm one of 47 people you decided were worth less than profit." She picked up her pay stub from the table, held it up. $4,500 to $2,700. That's not a difficult choice. That's theft disguised as business. Her hand moved to the other documents. Hassan needed that money for his daughter's medical treatment. Maria was supporting 3 children back home. Chen was saving for his mother's cancer care. Each name landed like a hammer blow. But you didn't care about that. You saw foreign workers as expendable, as numbers that could be reduced without consequence. Tanaka's face flushed deep red, his hands clenched into fists. "You have no right to—" "I have every right." Keisha's voice finally rose, not to a shout, but to something harder, more forceful. "You created a math problem about trust crisis, about what happens when you value profit over people." She pointed to the blackboard. "You didn't realize you were writing your own confession." The room held its breath. The Australian CEO stood, his chair scraped against marble. Tanaka, if you don't address this, I'm pulling my company's contract. $200 million. The Singaporean executive rose next. Same here, $150 million. An American CEO joined them. We don't do business with people who treat employees like disposable resources. $80 million. Gone. One by one, executives stood, announced numbers, the contracts they'd withdraw, the partnerships they'd end. The financial threat mounted like a tidal wave. Tanaka's composure cracked completely. He slammed his palm on the table. This is absurd. One disgruntled employee makes accusations and you all— 10 employees, the Australian CEO corrected, with documented evidence, official pay stubs, your own HR signatures. And a pattern, the Singaporean added. 47 cuts, all foreign workers, 0 Japanese employees affected. The American CEO leaned forward. That's not disgruntled, Tanaka. That's systematic. Keisha's voice cut through again. Calm now. The anger transformed into something colder, more devastating. You asked me where I studied math. You mocked my Japanese. You called me low-level service. She stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. You created a test designed to prove your superiority, to show that Japanese intellect surpasses everyone else. She paused, let the words hang. But you didn't count on someone like me, someone who understood both the math and the language, someone who'd been watching you long enough to know exactly what kind of man you are. Tanaka's breath came shallow, quick. Someone who had nothing left to lose. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Keisha delivered the final blow. You didn't lose because I'm smarter than you, Mr. Tanaka. You lost because you exposed yourself. You built the trap. I just made sure everyone could see it. The hotel manager moved from his position by the wall, stepped into the light. His neutral expression had transformed into something else. Respect. He looked at the assembled CEOs, then at Keisha. This woman works at my hotel, has for 8 months. His voice carried the weight of authority. Every day she serves with dignity, with excellence, never once complained, never once caused trouble. He turned to Tanaka. But I've also hosted your corporate meetings here, Mr. Tanaka, seen the documents left behind, the internal memos about cost-cutting that specifically targeted foreign labor. A pause, heavy with implication. I wondered when someone would speak up. Tanaka's legs seemed to give out slightly. He grabbed the table edge for support. The Australian CEO's voice cut through one more time. Keisha solved your equation, mathematically and philosophically. The $500 million is legally hers. He looked around the room. Other CEOs nodded. But more importantly, she exposed something that needed exposing, and that's worth more than any prize money. The Singaporean executive pulled out his phone, started recording. Mr. Tanaka, I'm documenting this moment. For the record, 47 employees were systematically discriminated against in Q2 2024. Do you deny it? Tanaka's mouth opened. Closed. No words came out. His silence was the loudest answer in the room. Keisha picked up her white apron from the side table, held it in both hands. The damp patch had dried now, left a faint water stain on the pristine fabric. She looked at it, then at Tanaka, then at the room full of witnesses. I didn't come here for revenge, she said quietly. I came here for justice. She folded the apron one more time, set it down gently. And now everyone knows the truth. Keisha's voice cut through the silence. I don't want the $500 million. The room erupted, voices overlapping in shock and confusion. What? She's refusing? Is she insane? The Australian CEO stood. Keisha, you won fairly. The money is legally yours. Why would you? Because that's not what this is about. Keisha turned to face the room, her voice steady, unwavering. 500 million won't change what happened to 47 people. It won't undo 3 months of struggle, of humiliation, of wondering if we mattered at all. She walked back to the blackboard, picked up the last stub of chalk, wrote a new equation. 47 employees, x $1,800 month, x 3 months, 254 is $400. She added another line, plus 20% compensation, 305,280. Then she turned back to Tanaka. I want you to use that money to compensate every single person you cut. Return what you stole. Add 20% as an apology for the hardship you caused. She set down the chalk. The rest, $499,694,720, you can keep. I don't want money that came from your ego. Tanaka's face went from red to pale. I refuse. This is extortion. No! The Australian CEO's voice hardened. This is consequences. The Singaporean executive stepped forward. Tanaka, if you don't agree to Keisha's terms, I'm pulling my contract. Today, $150 million. The American CEO joined. Same, $80 million. Gone. Others stood. One by one, the numbers mounted. Tanaka looked around the room, saw the wall of judgment closing in, his corporate partnerships crumbling in real time. His shoulders sagged. Fine. The word came out strangled. Bitter. I'll compensate them. Not good enough. Keisha's voice cut through. I want a public apology. Here, now, to all 47 employees you targeted. Tanaka's jaw clenched. You're asking me to humiliate myself. I'm asking you to take responsibility. Keisha didn't blink. You humiliated us for 3 months. You can spend 3 minutes being honest. The standoff stretched. Tanaka's pride warred with his survival instinct. Finally, his head bowed, not a small nod, a full bow, 90 degrees, the traditional Japanese gesture of deepest apology. He held it, 10 seconds that felt like eternity. When he straightened, his voice came out rough, broken. I apologize to the 47 foreign employees of Tanaka Corp for the unfair salary reductions implemented in Q2 2024. I commit to returning all reduced wages plus 20% compensation. Total payment of $305,280. His hands shook slightly. I was wrong. The words fell like stones into still water. The Singaporean CEO pulled out his phone, started recording. I'm sending this to your HR department, Tanaka, and to my legal team. This is now a binding commitment. Other phones appeared. Flashes lit up the room. Documentation multiplying. But Keisha wasn't finished. Apologies are easy. Words are cheap. She stepped closer. I want a system, something that makes sure this never happens again. She looked around the room, met the eyes of the executives watching. I propose an independent oversight committee, representatives from the affected employees, an outside HR specialist, and one CEO from this room willing to serve as an external auditor. The Australian CEO raised his hand. I'll do it. Quarterly reports. Full transparency. Tanaka's voice came out hollow. I agree. The hotel manager stepped forward, pulled a notebook and pen from his jacket pocket. I'll witness this. He began writing. Commitment to compensate 47 employees. Total payment $305,280. Independent oversight committee established. Australian CEO David Chen serving as external auditor. He turned the notebook toward Tanaka. Sign. Tanaka's hand trembled as he reached for the pen. The signature came out shaky, barely legible. But it was there. Legal. Binding. Witnessed by 20 of the most powerful business leaders in Asia Pacific. The hotel manager tore out the page, made a copy on his phone, handed the original to Keisha. Keep this safe, he said quietly. Then he turned to the room. His voice carried new authority. This woman has worked at my hotel for 8 months. Every day she demonstrated professionalism, intelligence, dignity under impossible circumstances. He paused, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small box. Inside was a golden name badge, fresh, engraved. Keisha Williams, Head of Staff Training. Effective immediately, you're promoted. Your salary is $7,000 per month. Your job is to train every new employee at Ritz-Carlton, Tokyo. He removed her old badge, service staff, pinned on the new one. Because anyone who can do what you just did deserves to teach others how to stand up, how to speak truth, how to demand respect. Applause erupted. Not polite golf claps. Real applause. The sound of genuine admiration. The Singaporean CEO approached, handed Keisha a business card. Tech Venture Singapore. 2,000 employees from 40 countries. I need someone who understands the value of human dignity. He smiled. 15,000 a month. HR consultant, flexible hours. The Australian CEO followed. Global Leadership Summit, Sydney, next month. 5,000 CEOs attending. I want you as our keynote speaker. $50,000 honorarium. More cards appeared, more opportunities, each one representing a door opening. Keisha stood in the center of it all, the white apron no longer on her body, the old badge removed, the evidence of her lower station stripped away. What remained was simply this: a brilliant woman, finally seen, finally valued. Tanaka stood alone near the wall, diminished. The empire he'd built through exploitation cracking at its foundation. Justice wasn't just punishment, it was restoration. It was making sure the system changed so others wouldn't suffer the same fate. The executives lined up, one by one, each wanting to shake Keisha's hand. The Australian CEO went first, David Chen. His handshake was firm, respectful. You didn't just solve a math problem tonight. You showed us what real leadership looks like. The Singaporean executive followed. My offer stands, $15,000 a month, HR consultant. Start whenever you're ready. An American CEO pressed her business card into Keisha's palm. We're launching a diversity initiative. We need someone who's lived it, not just studied it. The cards piled up in Keisha's hands. Opportunities she'd never dreamed possible 8 hours ago. But then someone else approached. A young woman, Indian, maybe 30 years old. She wore an expensive suit, but her eyes held something familiar. Recognition, shared pain. I work for a tech company in Osaka, she said quietly. I'm the only foreign woman in senior management. They pay me 60% of what my Japanese colleagues make. Her voice cracked slightly. I've wanted to quit so many times. Wanted to just disappear. Go somewhere I wouldn't have to fight for basic respect every single day. She looked at Keisha, really looked at her. But watching you tonight, knowing someone else understands what this feels like, tears ran down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. I'm not alone anymore, thank you. She pulled Keisha into a hug, held on tight. Two women who'd never met, but shared the invisible weight of being underestimated, being dismissed, being forced to work twice as hard for half the recognition. When they separated, others had gathered. More stories emerging. A Filipino accountant. They promoted everyone but me, said I didn't have leadership presence. A Brazilian engineer. My ideas get ignored until a Japanese colleague says the same thing. A Kenyan marketing director. They asked me to lead their diversity campaign but won't put me on the executive board. The stories poured out. Not complaints. Testimonies. Evidence that Keisha's battle wasn't isolated. It was universal. The hotel manager watched from the side. His expression had softened. Pride mixed with something else. Regret, maybe. For all the times he'd seen, but said nothing. He approached Keisha, spoke quietly. I've managed this hotel for 12 years, seen hundreds of employees come and go. He paused. You're the first who ever stood up like this, the first who had the courage to turn pain into action. He glanced at Tanaka, still standing isolated near the wall. And the first who showed me that silence is complicity. Keisha nodded. No words needed. She turned back to the blackboard. The equations still sprawled across the surface, chalk dust coating the bottom edge. She picked up the last tiny piece of chalk, barely a centimeter long now, held it carefully between her fingers. At the bottom of the board, below all the mathematics and accusations, she wrote one final line in large letters. Human value, infinite, immeasurable, beyond any number or formula. She set the chalk down. It crumbled to dust. Then she walked to the side table, to the white apron that had started this whole journey. She picked it up, smoothed the fabric one last time, the water stain still visible, a reminder of sabotage, of attempts to break her spirit. But the apron hadn't broken. Neither had she. She carried it to the blackboard, laid it carefully beneath the final equation, like a flag planted on conquered ground. Not discarded, not hidden, displayed, honored, a symbol of every battle fought while wearing it. Every shift worked with aching feet. Every dismissive glance endured. The uniform that was supposed to make her invisible had become her armor. And now it was retired. With dignity. With purpose. The room watched in silence, understanding the symbolism even without words. The Indian woman who'd hugged her earlier spoke first. That's beautiful. Others nodded. pulled out phones, captured the image, the white apron beneath the infinity symbol. Evidence that victory wasn't just about winning, it was about transformation, about taking the symbols of your oppression and rewriting their meaning. Keisha stepped back from the board, looked at her work one final time. The math, the evidence, the truth, the hope. All of it captured in chalk and fabric, and the faces of people who finally understood they weren't fighting alone. She smiled. Small, genuine. For the first time in 3 years, the weight lifted. That night, Keisha walked out of the Ritz-Carlton Tokyo a different person. Not because of the job offers in her pocket. Not because of the golden badge on her uniform. Not even because of the justice finally served. She walked out different because she'd proven something fundamental. Your value isn't determined by how others see you. It's determined by how you see yourself. The city lights of Tokyo spread out below her. Endless. Beautiful. Full of possibility. In her hand, she carried a new leather briefcase. A gift from David Chen, the Australian CEO. Inside were contracts, consulting agreements, speaking invitations. A future she'd stopped believing could exist. But more importantly, she carried something else. The knowledge that 46 other people would get their money back, would receive apologies, would know that someone had fought for them when fighting seemed impossible. That's what mattered. Not revenge, not riches, justice, real justice. The kind that fixes broken systems instead of just punishing broken people. Tanaka would face consequences. Quarterly audits, public scrutiny, the slow, grinding accountability that comes when powerful people can no longer hide their actions. But more than that, he'd face something worse. The knowledge that he'd been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, defeated by someone he'd dismissed as beneath his notice. That truth would follow him forever. Keisha smiled at the thought, not with bitterness, with satisfaction. She'd played his game, used his weapons, turned his own arrogance into the rope that hanged him, and she'd done it without losing herself in the process. How many times have you been underestimated, dismissed because of how you look, where you're from, what job you hold? How many times have you stayed silent because speaking up seemed too dangerous, too costly, too impossible? Keisha's story is a reminder. Preparation plus courage equals power. Document everything. Build your evidence. Wait for your moment. Then strike with precision. The world needs more people willing to stand up, to speak truth, to demand that human value be recognized as infinite. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. If this story moved you, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about justice, about courage, about the math that really matters, the equation that says, you are worth more than any system that tries to diminish you.